Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Real Talk with Ben podcast. I'm so glad you decided to tune in today. I hope today brings you some encouragement wherever you may be, whatever you're doing, or really whoever you're with. I hope that this episode brings you encouragement, maybe brings you a few laughs, and ultimately glorifies God. And if you're new, my name is Ben, and this is my podcast where I talk about life, I talk about ministry, I talk about things in the world that God is doing, and maybe even things in my own life that God is doing here at We're Life Hungry. So I'm so glad that you decided to tune in. I hope you stick around past this episode. This episode is going to be a really good one, so I hope you enjoy it. Hope you get some encouragement. Ultimately, I hope you get closer to God through this episode. So with that, let's get started. And that was a weird pause, Ben, but it's okay. Let's get started and let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. But before I get into that, I actually have a couple announcements. If you've listened to my I guess if you watched my YouTube videos, if you've been around that a lot more than maybe the podcast, you know that I had a series called Behind the Lens with my friend Donnie, and it was one of my favorite one of my favorite series that I've ever done. And some people thought it is dead or I'm not bringing it back. Well, you're wrong. After about 2 months, almost 3 months now of not doing it, we are bringing it back. It's in the works. We're kind of working through when we record, planning all of it and everything like that. It's a little different now with students here. It's kind of, there's just a lot that we have to kind of figure out around, but it is coming back. I have some great ideas for it, and I've got some great feedback from it, and I want to start it up again. And it's been really hard not to. Obviously, we've been very busy with camp, and then after camp, we were both kind of on vacation for a while, so we kind of never really were in the same place at the same time. So it's one of those things where I think it's going to be a great opportunity to bring it back. Hopefully, you guys will tune in, especially if you're interested in photography or videography or editing. I really hope you get to you'll get to watch it, but hopefully you'll get to learn something too. Obviously, we've all learned from scratch, so that's a really fun series that we are bringing back. And also, it kind of goes in today's topic, but I'll kind of mention it. Is I'm hopefully trying to start a new era of the podcast. Now, still going to remain Real Talk with Ben. That the whole idea of it is not going to change. In reality, the whole concept of it's not going to change. But what is going to change is, I think, the message and the goal of the podcast. And I'm going to get into that during today's episode. But I really want to bring not only more episodes, but I really want to bring a different flair, a different flavor, whatever words you want to throw in there, to make this podcast great and to really encourage people that listen and that want to listen. So, what is today's episode going to be about? And it's something that I thought about. I'm like, okay, it's kind of been a busy week. If you didn't know, students literally are arriving this week. They've all been, arrived last week, but they're all entering or leaving quarantine. We have Hungarians coming in. It's kind of been crazy around here. So I'm thinking, what do I talk about that's not just talking about everything that's going on here? Because that's Friday recap. So trying not to, and I'm sorry, I have like an itch in my, it's weird. Anyways, what am I going to talk about today? Well, I wanted to talk about something that is very close and dear to my heart. It's something that I have a passion about, obviously. And that is, why do we use media? Why do we use media for ministry? And I have this in like a 3-section kind of topic, because if you know the story, and obviously I probably have mentioned it before on this podcast, but I want to mention it again. And when I started this podcast, and back in January, I believe, when I started this podcast was about sharing my heart, sharing what I love, and that's ministry and things that I'm passionate about, sports and people in my lives and stuff like that. And that's great. But I really want to start back to when I got my start in media. When did I start loving media to the point where I basically have a part-time career, even though I earn no money from it? I have a part-time career in making and creating media for people like you to listen to and watch. And so it goes back 3 years ago, and it's actually a really good time, because this is the month that this is the month about 3 years ago when I started doing vlogs and things like that. So if you go back 3 years, my grandfather had passed away on October 16th, right? Yes, October 16th, 2017. It was a very tough time for me and for my family, obviously. And there will be a episode coming out of the podcast that most likely will be on that around that time. So I'll talk more about that then. But during this time, I needed to find a way. I needed to find a way to release, to just talk, and hopefully someone would listen. I wasn't comfortable going to somebody, at least right away. I ended up getting my mentor around that time as well, but at first I wasn't. And so I remember picking up my phone, and I already had it like a YouTube channel per se, a profile. I remember picking up my phone, and I remember just recording. Actually, it wasn't even my phone. I think it was my computer. And I remember clicking the record button and sharing my testimony and talking about things. Sorry. That was the moment of when media became an outlet for me. Media became something that I could look at not just as a thing I watch on the weekends or at night, but becomes an outlet to maybe I can encourage someone. And at that moment in time, I didn't think one, it would become this, what I'm doing now. Maybe at that moment in time, I really didn't think I was going to help anybody. But I remember shortly after that, and about a couple, I think, weeks after that, I remember people coming to me at Cedarville and saying, "Hey, we saw your video or whatever, and we're really encouraged," you know? And so from that time, I didn't really make videos that often. I would vlog here and there. It wasn't until I believe it was like that spring, I think, if I remember right, it was that spring of 2018 was when I started vlogging a lot more, and I would end up vlogging my mission trip and stuff like that, you know? And it became something I did. But again, it wasn't, you know, I dreamed obviously of being a YouTuber and that because I started watching people. But it wasn't until I realized the impact that this, you know, ministry could have on people. But it was interesting because as that year went on and as that summer went on, I actually stopped doing YouTube. I stopped doing videos. I stopped media, really. I did not pick up or click record, as they would say, until I remember like through that fall. It was like the fall of my senior year of college. I remember I recorded a video with Ryan and Clara, who were going to be the SJ president and vice president at the time. And I remember that, right? And I remember, you know, having that conversation, that interview with them. It was great. I had finished some other videos that I had done in Hungary, and then I basically put it away. I didn't bring it back out at all. And I kind of lost the reason why I did it. I think part of it was because I thought maybe I would boom onto the scene. At that time, I believe I had like 8 subscribers. I thought maybe I was going to boom onto the scene, something was going to hit. But it wasn't until actually throughout my senior year and near the end, actually, as I graduated, I remember going, I'm gonna get back on there. So I remember posting an update about where I've been or something like that. Because like I had been doing vlogs, you know, throughout, you know, the year. And then when I took a break, I didn't do anything. So I kind of like where I was at. And then I remember I was like, you know what? I remembered the feeling that it gave me, the excitement, the ability to share things that were going on. And as many of you know, and if you know me or my family, you know that I'm a talkative guy. So it made sense, right? And I remember that May, so it was after I graduated, I would still had a semester left of school and I was still going to work at Cedarville. I remember I was like, you know what? I'm making some money now. I want to purchase a camera. So actually the camera, if you're watching, this is the camera I actually bought. And that was the moment when things just clicked. And I started making videos not for me to, I guess, not for me to want to maybe get somewhere with YouTube or get somewhere with these videos on Facebook or whatever. But ultimately, it became an opportunity to maybe talk about things that no one talks about. Maybe have some fun too. I did sit down Saturdays and real life Thursdays and funny joke videos and fun with videos with my mom and dad, or my dad and my brother. And I did that for, you know, the next 4 or 5 months. You know, came here and I did daily vlogs, which was, by the way, that's just a whole nother level. I don't know how some of those guys do it. But I did it, you know, and I enjoyed it and I loved it. My subscribers started going up. And there was a moment in that fall as I was student teaching, I'm going, maybe I can make this a career, right? But do I think it can be a career at this point? I'll get to that in a bit. But what I do know is through that moment, or through that, I can't speak. Through those, I can't speak. I really can't. Through that time, there we go. I was really enjoying it. I started loving it. I remember during Christmas break, so a year ago, so it would have been a year ago, and this coming up here in December will be a year, when Jared and I started talking about doing a podcast. You know, we love talking about things, sports, whatever. So we started a podcast, The Bros Know, and it was a hit. And we only got 10 episodes, and then I came to Hungry, right? But then during that time was obviously when I started the podcast. So long story short, I just took 10 minutes to talk about that, but I really did because I wanted to explain the kind of my journey. But I started this podcast, obviously, to encourage people. And it's been an amazing blessing. I was at 2 episodes. Now I went down to 1. I had people on to interview like Mishi and Donnie and Diego and my dad and my brother. A lot of people have been on this podcast, and I've enjoyed it. And I've enjoyed what it's become. I've enjoyed my YouTube videos. Obviously, I've changed it up since I came to Hungry. You know, I'm doing Friday recaps. I'm doing, obviously, the podcast is on there. Obviously, I want to do more. And again, I'll get to that here in a bit. Why do I love doing this? It's a question I get a lot, or even the question of why do you do this? And that's a question I really didn't know how to answer probably up until I came to Hungry. Why do I do this? I do this because I see it's a need, especially in my generation, where most of the people in my generation are on their phones, on YouTube, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And I see a lot of even the older generation are online a lot more. I see it as an opportunity to share the gospel in a way that is able to reach more people than just me on the ground, right? I love serving here, but even More Life Hungry their camp team has come out with a podcast to reach more kids that might not be able to come to camp or might not have the funds to come to camp. They still can hear the gospel. Now, do I share the gospel every video I do or every podcast I do? No, but I hope that the tone inside of that video is the gospel. And while there's hectic things going on in this world, we talk about the media, and it's kind of a bad term right now, right? You think about the media and people think of the left media or the right media, or how people bash each other and the politics and everything like that. You know, my goal with me being a part of the media is to hopefully be the light in the dark, which is the mainstream media. Do I ever think I'm going to have a podcast of 4 million people listening every day? No. Do I ever think that my videos will ever eclipse millions of views? Probably not. But at the end of the day, I truly believe that what I do can maybe bring that encouragement. And not only encouragement, but I really want to be even like an alternative idea away from mainstream media, like an alternative place that families can come, that people can come to be encouraged, you know? And that's really why I love doing this, is because I try to be family friendly. You know, the Bowden Experience brand, as I like to call it, is faith, family, fun. I love to bring that fun atmosphere, those jokes, but I also like to make it real about faith, about God, but also be family friendly. It's always been a goal. So I want it to be an alternative as well. Alternative, instead of just another option, but an alternative option that is going to bring encouragement, that's going to bring God's word into it, or some encouraging ideas into someone's everyday life. Now, some might say or I've even been asked, you know, what's next? You know, are you just going to do this and like never get paid or anything like that? And I'll tell you this is what I'll say. I love what I'm doing. If me just having a normal job, 9-to-5 job, or being a missionary or whatever, if that's the job I have, and this is just a side, maybe hobby, as some would say, but like a side thing I do, if that's what God wants, then that's what it's going to be. But if I'm honest with you, I would love to make this a full-time thing. That doesn't mean that I'm getting millions of views, like I said, or anything like that. But the idea of doing a podcast, doing YouTube videos, but also being able to help people in their own way, whether that's churches hiring me to do video, whether that's people coming alongside and saying, hey, can you help us with this project? Because I want it to be a ministry. I don't want it just to be about me. I made these 100 Days in Hungary and 200 Days in Hungary documentaries, or short films, I should say, not a documentary, but short films. I want to do more of those. I want to help people. I want to share stories of people. That's what I want. That's my dream. And I know that's kind of a lot of stuff that probably didn't even really make sense. But let me put it this way. My dream for the Bound Experience, for this podcast, for these videos is simply this. I want to be a light in this world, that when people see the Bound Experience, they don't just see a guy behind a camera or a guy in front of the camera. What they see is a guy that's taking photos, doing videos for God's glory. And that along the way that I'm able to share stories, I'm able to help people see what God is doing in this world, to help people see how God is changing this world, And so that is what I really want. That's the dream I have for the Bound Experience. I want to turn this into a full-time occupation, a full-time job of not just being in front of the camera, or not just editing videos, but capturing moments, capturing maybe videos, or capturing photos, taking those moments and sharing them with the world, not for my gain, but for God's glory. And so to kind of wrap that up and then wrap this whole concept up is, what's next and what are you going to do with the podcast? I'll tell you this, that I talked about the whole idea of the podcast slightly changing, or maybe even kind of formatting. It's this, I still am going to do my podcast at least one day a week, hopefully maybe 2 days a week. But I would love to do this. If I do 2 episodes a week, is one episode is going to be like this, where I'm just talking to you guys. But I would love to have an episode, maybe not every week, but maybe every other week, where I'm interviewing somebody, whether that's from back home, whether that's here in Hungary. But I want people to hear stories. If I'm saying that's what I want to start that. The same with my YouTube videos. I would love to get more people involved with my videos, whether that's doing fun cooking videos or fun, goofy videos, the try not to laugh, the videos I used to do. Basically, I want to get back to what the Bound Experience was about a year ago. It was about telling stories. It was about having fun. I feel like I've sometimes got away from having fun because I want to be all serious all the time, which I think is important. But at the same time, I want to be a light no matter what I do. I want to have fun. So I know this might have been a weird episode to talk about, or how has Ben talking about this, or why has Ben talking about this. I wanted to talk about it because I wanted to finish up with this. You do not have to be a pastor. You don't have to be a missionary. You don't have to be a teacher. You don't have to be a businessman to have an impact on people. I think sometimes we think that we have to be in this leadership position, or we have to be a pastor or a missionary in order to share the gospel. I want to share with you some advice that I got from a friend recently. He said this, he said, you can't look at only where you are, but you need to look at where you are and what you're doing. So the idea of it is, and that might not make sense to you right away, but what the idea is, don't focus on where you are, but at the same time, focus where you are. So the idea of focusing on the fact that God has you where you are for a purpose, you need to use that purpose. That doesn't mean you only focus at that and say, I'm only going to focus on my job. I'm not in ministry. I never will be in ministry. You have the chance to impact somebody by the way you act, by the words you say, by the things you do. I think that's the same thing as acting. But anyways, those ideas. So whether you are a teacher, whether you're a janitor, whether you're a carpenter, whether you're a hunter, whether you play baseball on the weekends for fun, or whether you are a professional athlete, whether you're not a professional athlete, whatever you're doing, maybe you're just in school. That is your ministry. That is your ministry ground. I've chosen a hobby that I love, which is doing media and taking pictures and doing video. That's what I've chosen as something I can use in order to further the gospel and share God's glory. So find that place, that thing you do. Maybe you go to a place that is a very lost place. Maybe you work at a place that's like that. But be that light, whatever you do in this world. However you do it for God's glory. And I know that might seem like everyone tells you that. But I can tell you that from a guy that started this process, I started this whole media thing out of a time of struggle, and I just simply clicked record. And it's turned into this. It's turned into something that I do 3 or 4 times a week that, by the way, I am doing for Word of Life. I am sitting down every day, editing videos. This would have never happened if I never clicked record. If I never would have opened up, if I never would have gotten comfortable because I wanted to be maybe encouragement to somebody. What if that's you? What if you're a guy that likes to go golfing, but you're always afraid to ask that friend, maybe because you think you're not good enough? But maybe you asking that friend was something that he needed to hear. So my encouragement for you is this. Take the opportunities that you've been given, where you are, right? Don't focus on just where you are, but also focus on where you are. So don't just focus on what you do and where you are, but focus on what you do and where you are for God's glory. There's a difference. God calls us to be salt and light where we are. Let's go do that together. I know for me, that's what I'm going to try to do. And I hope that's what you try to do as well. So what can I say? Thank you so much for the support you've given me. Today I talked about my journey in media, and it wouldn't be without you guys, without you listening, without you watching. Yeah, some might say I don't have a lot of followers or I don't have a lot of subscribers or whatever. That's not what it's about. I just hope I bring encouragement to you every single day. Every time I upload, every time I post. And if I don't, I apologize. That's what I'm trying to do, is to bring that encouragement. And hopefully, as I'm looking at changing the way I do things, as Behind the Lens comes back, and as I'm looking at how do I make this brand, this media experience better for you. So thank you for the support. Thank you for the continued support. I know you continue supporting me as long as I don't go crazy, but I know you continue to support me. And so I would like to say this, and I want to remind you of this, that we serve an amazing God. And without him, this is not possible. And what you do is not possible. So let's remember that. And if you love this podcast, if you've enjoyed listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, favorite it. Make sure it's on that front page so you can see it every time I go up, every time I post. That way you'll see it. If you're listening on YouTube, go ahead and click that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way you always see everything that's going on. Every time I post, every time I add a new video or a new series, you'll be able to see that. So once again, I want to say thank you. Once again, I want to remind you of this, that we serve an amazing God, that he is faithful and we can trust him. And as always, we'll talk next time.